that visionary approach. How do these 5% this 5% succeed? So I wanted to give you a few pointers here on how AI integration inside of your brand, your company, can succeed. And also point out where you're failing, but letting you know that you're not alone in your failures. Matter of fact, you're in the majority, unfortunately. So when we look at this 5%, what are they doing differently? I always question, how are visionary leaders turning AI from an expensive pilot program into a genuine, authentic, competitive advantage for their brand and their company? So let me break it down into some principles. I always love principles from the visionary leader. And if you haven't read the book, I address all of this inside of the visionary leader. I not only profile great visionary leaders from centuries, all the way back from Socrates to Gandhi to Abraham Lincoln to Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, all the way up to Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. And so these are broken down into principles. And the first one is start with vision, not technology. That's critical because what you need at the top of any type of disruption, and I've said this for every single podcast ad nauseum, you need a vision before you need technology. Technology is only as good as your ability to define a vision. Visionary leaders don't start with AI, they start with a compelling vision for their organization's future. Remember from our previous episodes, visionary leaders articulate a clear and passionate vision that serves as the foundation for all visionary thinking. And here's how this applies to AI. And what you need to be asking is define where your organization needs to be in 3 to 5 years, not 6 months, not 3 to 5 months. And identify the capabilities you'll need that you don't have today. That's an interesting one because nobody asked that question. Only then, once you've answered those questions, can you ask, how can AI help us build those capabilities? You don't ask that first. You need to define your vision and then identify the capabilities that are going to achieve that vision. And then ensure that these AI initiatives align with your long-term vision, not your strategy, not just short-term efficiency gains. That's a very critical one as well, is ask yourself, are you doing this just because everybody else is doing it or because it aligns with your long-term vision of where you want to take your brand or your company? Don't just do it because everybody else is. That isn't a strategy. This approach ensures that every AI investment contributes to the cohesive future of your company and brand, rather than creating this, what I call patchwork of disconnected tools that don't work together. The second is understand the landscape before you build it. One of the core principles in the visionary leader, the success principles of the world's greatest visionaries, is to thoroughly understand the landscape. Visionary leaders stay informed about market trends, consumer needs, not wants. Identify the needs before the customer knows they need it, not their wants. They're not visionaries. They're not future thinkers. They're not future casters. And emerging technologies to identify gaps and disruptive opportunities. So for successful AI implementation, this really means conducting an in-depth analysis of where AI creates genuine competitive advantage in your industry. Understanding your customers' evolving needs, which is continually evolving, and how AI can address them. And also identifying the gaps between current capabilities and future requirements. The successful 5% aren't implementing AI because everyone else is. They're implementing it because they've identified specific strategic opportunities. Now, there's the difference between the 95 and a 5. I can tell you is 100% accurate. I ask that question when we're whiteboarding with these leaders of companies and brands. Well, why do you want to implement AI? A lot of them will come right out and say, because we feel we need it, because it's an evolving technology that everybody else is doing. I said, that's not a strategy. That's just a comment. I said, that's a recipe for failure. Identify how this is going to change your organization and where you're going with your brand or your company 3 to 5 years from now. And number 3 is build adaptive, learning capable system. Adaptive systems is critical because AI is adaptive. That's why they call it generative AI. Here's a critical insight from MIT research again. It says success hinges on adaptive, learning capable systems rather than static tools. I completely agree. This aligns perfectly with the visionary principle of embracing flexibility and adaptability in the book. Visionary leaders recognize that AI isn't a set it and forget it technology. The landscape of business and AI is really dynamic, and their ability to adjust thinking and strategies in response to changing conditions is critical to their success. Do you do this? If you don't, you need to. And what does that real world application look like when we talk about adaptive learning capable systems? There's 3 points here. One is you invest in AI systems that can learn from your organization's unique culture and context. Number 2 is you build feedback loops. And you have design workflows that evolve with AI and how it learns. Number 4 is you create a culture of innovation and experimentation. Remember the principles of Think Different from our previous episode. Visionary leaders drive sessions where idea generators can disrupt their industry without the fear of judgment. We talked about that in the last episode. They view failures as learning opportunities and encourage a culture that embraces experimentation. You have to do the same. It's critical to your success. So this is 4 points that are critical for AI success based off of creating a culture of innovation and experimentation. One is foster an environment where teams can test AI applications without the fear of failure. Don't get pissed off when they fail. Reward them because they've taken you a step closer to executing your AI vision and how it's going to be incorporated into your long-term strategy. Reward innovation. Creative problem solving with AI tools. Start small with pilot projects, but design them to scale if they're working. View setbacks as data points that inform you for better implementation going forward. So these are pieces of the creating a culture of innovation and experimentation. And the number 5 is, empower your teams and gain buy-in from them. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of successful AI implementation is often not getting buy-in from your teams and just forcing it down their throat. You don't want that. So how do visionary leaders excel to get buy-in? They assemble diverse, passionate teams that align with the vision. They empower teams by giving them the autonomy and the freedom in the AI application process itself. They communicate clearly about how AI will enhance rather than replace human capabilities. You need to be able to communicate effectively as to what your strategy is and how it's going to impact them to be more efficient and more effective and not eliminated. So invest in training and skill development so teams can work effectively with AI. The failure of 95% of AI pilots comes down to this. Organizations implement the technology but forget to bring their people along on that journey. Think about that. You can't implement this in a silo. You need to have your team supplemented in your process for AI integration in order for it to succeed. And number 6 is measure what matters and iterate. Visionary leaders establish measurable KPIs to avoid innovation failures. They look for honest, foundational, and authentic feedback and regularly assess their performance against these indicators. So let's look at for AI implementation as an example. What does this mean? I'll give you 4 points here. What it means is define clear success metrics before launching an AI initiative. If you don't have a measure, you don't know what success looks like. Number 2 is create feedback mechanisms to capture what's working and what isn't. Be willing to pivot or shut down initiatives that aren't delivering value. Get the hell out. Go with what's working and eliminate that which is not. And have the strength to get rid of it. Too many people hang on too long and they don't make a move. So celebrate and scale successes rapidly, immediately. If you delay, it isn't authentic. The successful 5% are ruthlessly focused on measurable business impact, not vanity metrics like AI tools deployed or employees using AI. These are all BS statistics that nobody should care about. If you do, get rid of those metrics and reward failure and give the freedom to execute AI initiatives that are working and get rid of the ones that are not. So what is